Hey, what is up everyone? Sean here. Now, as you probably know, student loan debt is a major issue in today's society and in today's economy. And it probably is one of the biggest reasons why people are failing to get their first home, to start a family, and to really essentially just build wealth for themselves. According to recent statistics, the national student loan debt is around $1.5 trillion, and about 40% of borrowers are expected to default on their loans by the year 2023. Now, some other statistics I found that were really disturbing were that 3 million elderly people are still paying on their student loans, and that as of May 2018, there's approximately 101 people that still owe at least $1 million or more in student loan debt. This is absolutely crazy. What I want to do today is talk about 7 strategies that will help you pay off your student loans as fast as possible. So if you are as excited as I am, make sure you smash that like button, hit the subscribe button channel if you are into financial videos, saving money, building wealth, investing for your future, creating financial freedom, and let's hop into this. Okay, so this is why student loan debts are such an issue. Right now, the national average payment is around $393. So let's just call it $400. And let's say instead of having a $400 payment, you were able to take $400 and invest it into a low-cost index fund over the next 20 years that averaged a conservative 7% return. Well, over the next 20 years, you would accumulate around a $208,000 portfolio. And that's just at a 7%, which is pretty conservative. Let's say you got closer to the national average of the S&P 500, which is around 10%. Well, that $208,000 now jumps to $300,000 in your account. So this is why it's gonna be so important to make sure we pay these debts off as fast as possible and get to where our money is now working for us and building wealth. So how do we do that? So the very first step is to create a budget. Now, I know this seems like a really basic first step and pretty simple, but it really is super important. Those who fail to plan are planning to fail. And if you do not have a budget in place, more than likely you're gonna have a hard time paying off those student loan debts. So my advice would be to start with your fixed and variable expenses. Your fixed expenses are going to be your expenses that do not fluctuate from month to month. Those are the things that stay the same, like your rent or your mortgage. It's going to be things like your car payment, your cell phone payments. Get a list of those and then get a list of your variable expenses. These are expenses that actually do fluctuate based on how you are spending your money. This could be like eating out, groceries, and gas. My advice to this, go ahead and go through the last 3 to 6 months of your bank statements and get the average of that to figure out about how much you spend every single month. Once you have these expenses, I would highly suggest figuring out how you can cut between 10 to at least 20% of your budget in these areas. So this brings me to my next step, which is pay more than your minimum payment, especially in the beginning, and here's why. Anytime you take out a loan from the government or a lender, not only do they want their money back, but they want to charge you interest on that money. They want to get paid for letting you borrow some cash. But in addition to getting interest, they want to make sure they get their payment back as quickly as possible. They don't want to wait 5, 10, 20 years to get all their money back. So what they do is they do what's called front loading a loan. Now, without going into crazy detail on what front loading is, essentially all it means is that majority of your payment for the first half of your loan typically is going to go mostly to interest to pay back the lender as quickly as possible. Then in the latter half of the loan, especially in the last year or two, pretty much all of your payment is now going to the principal. So the reason this is important is because if you make extra payments in the beginning, it's going to help you pay your student loan debts off faster. So let's do an example. So let's say that you owe $35,000 at a 6% interest over a 10-year loan, which would be a pretty standard loan agreement for student loans. If you were to make an extra 20% payment, which would be about $77, you would save $2,600 in interest payments over those 10 years, plus you would actually pay those student debts off within 8 years instead of 10. Now, a couple quick tips is that if you are going to use this strategy, make sure when you're making those extra payments that you contact your lender and you specifically ask them to have those extra payments go onto that current month bill. A lot of times what they'll do if you make extra payments is they'll take the extra amount and put it onto the next month's bill, which basically defeats the purpose. So the third strategy on paying your debts off faster is using the snowball effect, which was popularized by Dave Ramsey. Now, without going into too much detail on this, I'll probably post post another video later on this particular topic. The idea behind this is you want to line up all of your debts from the least amount to the greatest amount. And what you're going to do is you're going to put all your extra cash that you can onto the smallest debt that you have. Once you pay off that debt, you're going to take all the amounts that you have paying on that first debt, and you're going to then add them onto the next lowest debt. Once those debts are paid off, you take all of those payments, add it on to the next lowest debt, and so on and so forth. This is a really effective strategy for paying your debts off really fast, and it also has a lot of psychological benefit to keeping you motivated and amped, seeing those different debts come off over the course of time. Now, the fourth strategy is to make sure that you use all your tax refunds and also your pay increases towards your debts. Now, unfortunately, this is where rubber meets the road, and this is where sacrifices have to come into play. Typically, when people get a refund or a pay increase, it usually goes to buying a TV or a slightly nicer car. Maybe we spend it on some clothes. This is the time when we really have to stay focused and make sure that any extra income via tax refunds, pay increases, must go towards paying those debts off as quickly as possible. So the fifth step is to increase your income using a side hustle. Once you've maximized your budget cuts, at this point, we really need to focus on how to make extra income. And here's why. Let's say you found yourself a skill set or a side hustle that actually earned you an extra $50,000 that particular year. Well, guess what? If you could take all that extra money, and of course, assuming that, after taxes, but if you took all that extra money and applied to your student loan debt, you'd be able to pay it off probably within a year. So my tip on creating side hustles is find a skill that you have. And this could be anything. Maybe you're skilled at an instrument. Maybe you know sports really well. Maybe you're good at health and nutrition. Maybe you know Spanish or English or history. Maybe you could tutor. Maybe you know how to do web design. Find some sort of knowledge or some sort of skill where you could create a product, you could create a service. Do something that will give you more income per hour than you make at your current job. There are a lot of ways of making $30, $40, $50, $60, $70 plus an hour doing skills that you probably already have. One of the things you could do is go on different freelance websites like Fiverr, like Upwork, TaskRabbit, etc., and see what people are doing to make money. And you'd be surprised at what people are doing to make extra side cash, and use all that extra money to quickly apply it to your student loans. So the sixth step is to refinance your student loans. For some people, refinancing could be a really great way of quickly paying down your debts faster and getting yourself into better terms so that it's easier to get ahead of your student loans. Now, keep in mind that not everybody's going to have this option, but let's use this as an example. Let's say that you currently owe $50,000 in student loan debt and your interest rate is 8.5%. Well, if you're able to reduce that 8.5% down to 4.5%, you could actually pay off those student loans 2 years earlier. In addition to that, you would save approximately $13,000 over the course of your loan, having a similar amount of payment. Now, there's a couple things that you want to think about if you're planning to refinance. Number one is you need to have a credit score of at least of high 600s or more. In addition to that, you also want to make sure you have a good debt to income ratio. If you do not have these things, you may not be able to refinance your loans. Maybe this would not be a good option for you. Another thing that you should consider is that you should not be doing refinancing if you think you're going to need debt repayment services, kind of like income-driven repayment plans. So the seventh step is to make bi-weekly payments. This is kind of similar to paying a little bit extra each month on your loan, but it's a little bit different, so let's talk about this. The idea behind making bi-weekly payments is you simply take the amount that you owe every single month, let's say it's $400, and you would divide that by 2, so it'd be $200. And what that would mean is that every 2 weeks, you want to pay essentially $200 towards your loan. So you're probably thinking, well, what difference does that make? Well, because there's 52 weeks in the year, if you pay half the amount every 2 weeks, essentially what you're doing is you're making an extra payment every single year on your student loans. This really can have a massive effect on the ability to pay down your student loans, save interest, and cut your time down by at least quite a few years on your student loan payments. Okay, so those are the 7 steps to help you quickly pay off your student loans. I want you to comment below, which one are you most interested in or excited about? Or if you use a strategy that's different from the 7 that I mentioned, what are you doing? Make sure you comment that below to let everybody else know, help each other out in paying off these student debts. Because let's face it, student loans absolutely suck. So let's get these things paid off. Let's start building wealth for ourselves. If you haven't done so already, make sure you smash that like button, hit the subscribe button for me, and I wish you the best of luck. Let's get out there and crush it.